is the Coast Fire retirement strategy? The strategy refers to saving aggressively in your early career to reach a point where your retirement accounts are large enough to essentially coast towards retirement without needing to contribute any further. I got the following request referring to this scenario, this strategy. It said, let's say you work hard to save $500,000 by age 40 and would like to stop investing until retirement so you can spend more on your family and experiences. Assume you will need $5,000 per month in living expenses in retirement. The calculators online say you should be good with this approach if you retire at age 67, but I would love to see what your spreadsheets say. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and look at these numbers right here. He has $500,000 saved up. He's age 40. He needs $5,000 in expenses, assuming that's meaning today's dollars. So if he retires, he's 40. If he retires at age 67, that $5,000 he needs now is going to grow to needing $11,106 with a 3% inflation rate. So how would that have worked out? Again, we're using numbers for the last 100 years, and we project ahead what the same kind of returns might do in the future. And I want you to notice something, that even without Social Security, even in the worst case scenario, you would not run out of money. And these are the worst years for each of these different periods. In fact, you'll notice, for example, if we go 14 years out, you would have less than what you started with after 14 years. That's why it's highlighted in yellow, because you have less than what you put in. Notice all these amounts in yellow are less than 500,000. But he's retiring in 27 years, not in 14 years. So if we go down to year 27, he will have, in the worst case scenario, to have $4,210,000. That's in the worst case scenario. Now, what I've done setting up this spreadsheet is I've set it up. Hopefully this makes sense to you. I began in 1925, and I ran the numbers for every year depending on what these returns were going forward from 1925. You can see the amounts going down through there, and you can see, for example, in the 14th year, the lowest you're going to see in this row in the 14th year, you can see 1925 numbers are 1,297,000 going across there. You see the worst case scenario is 1929. You see 437, 437. You go up, the worst case after 13 years is actually a year later, is right here. No, it's still 1929. 12 years, 396 right there. That's 1930, because that's what the returns are going forward. So this calculates all the way through. But I want you to notice something right here. Worst case scenario, go down to here, you depression type years, but there's 1 year in here after 10 years. The worst case scenario is in 1999. Why was it 1999? Because you started here and you had these down years, and then you had down 37%. So in the last 100 years, the worst case scenario after 10 years, you'd have right here, 434,000. But again, you're not taking it out till 27 years later. So 27 years later, your money would last. This is showing us in these rows right here, this row right here, what you have left given this scenario, $500,000, never adding another dime. Because somebody else asked me about this strategy, and they said, what happens if you have a lost decade? Well, that would be 1999. That was definitely a lost decade. You ended up with 434,000 after putting 500,000 in. 10 years later, you have less than that. And so when you go to retire, this would be the worst case scenario. And yet, if you take it out there, from 1999 for the next 25 years, you do not run out of money. Well, that's what we do on this channel. We run all kinds of different numbers for people. Let me just show you again the 1999 numbers. Going way out here. Sorry about the blur here, 1999. Here's the 1999 numbers. There's after 10 years, see the 434, there's the 434. And yet look how it grew, because what happened after 1999? You had some down years, but look what happened next. You had these down years, it was a lost decade, but then you had up 26, up 50. Look at all these positives. And that's basically what we've had since 1999. So even though that was the worst case scenario after 10 years, it came back mightily. So you would have no problem, money lasting. In fact, you can see right down through here in the 26th year, that's using 2024 numbers, you'd have $3.865 million. But that's how this spreadsheet is built out, is using 100 years worth of data. And we want to see what would happen if you never added another dime. So at age 40, given these scenarios, even including the lost decade in 1999, still not all the way back here, 1999, even though you were down to 434,000, starting with 500,000, some of these other years are down too, everything highlighted in yellow. But look where you'd be after 25 years, $3.6 million after. That's what the 500,000 would have grown to, even going through a bad decade. So it looks like that coasting fire strategy would work out if you have enough to begin with. This is the key. If you have amounts like this and can let that accumulate for 27 years, look where you'd be. Now let's start changing a few things. Let's go down and say you have retired age 66, no problem. 65, no problem. 64, again, I'm watching right here. And folks, we haven't even taken into account any Social Security here. If you put Social Security in there, that helps immensely. Let's say, for example, you have, again, I'm getting away from what he said, but let's say you have 250,000. Now you see you run out of money in the worst case scenario after 16 years. You can see it going down through here. But that's because we haven't taken into account Social Security. What if he's getting 1,500? I'm just throwing out a number, 1,500 from Social Security. Then all of a sudden, it's lasting 25 years. You have 2,000 Social Security at age 67, up to 29 years. That's at age 62. If you go to age 63, now you're over 40 years. So I just wanted to run the numbers at half the amount they gave me, not putting in another dime, and yet taking into account Social Security when that kicks in at age 67. But they're taking it at age 63, so they would get 75% of their amount of this 2,000, which also grows by a COLA, which grows to this amount right here, of which you get 75% of it. I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, but I just wanted to answer this question. What is this Coast Fire strategy, and how would it work out? Well, if you have $500,000, we saw it did no problem, and that's not even taking into account taking Social Security. I just want to run the numbers for these people. Several people have asked about that. What about if you have a lost decade? Well, we saw 1999 was definitely a lost decade, and yet because they had 500,000, there was no problem. They were not going to run out of money in any of these possible periods over the last 100 years. Again, that's what we do on this channel. We use the returns for the last 100 years, including these depression type years where you had all these down decades. Because if your money can survive through this with your strategy, it's probably going to survive through anything that might be coming. Again, that's what we do on this channel. We run numbers for people. We love doing it. We use the actual historical returns of the S&P 500, and we simply project what similar returns might do for you in the future. And it's simply a possible range of what may happen. Please consider subscribing. Please let people know about this channel. I would love to have this information out to more and more people that they can use and understand just what compounding can do if you're in it for the long term. If you can have, in this case, where we're looking at somebody 27 years, but even when we went down to age 60, that's 23 years, still no problem. So that's what we love doing for people, running numbers for people. Thanks for watching.